Tammy asked me to come and talk with you a bit, and I thought I would give you my take on an unofficial take on faculty and the site visit. So I hope that it's a useful take. And I think if you look at the upcoming 25 symposium sessions that the Center for Teaching and Learning website is advertising, the first thing you'll notice is that each one is aimed at improving teaching and learning. Looking at those sessions makes me nostalgic and hopeful at the same time. Nostalgic because this level of professional development programming has happened before, and hopeful because it's happening again. If we were taking the temperature of the teaching and learning environment at Lane, I think we would say that Lane is healthy. Unfortunately, I think the looming specter of accreditation has led to a sense of anxiety and institutional low self-esteem. And I think this is cyclical. It happens a lot. And that's my PowerPoint. We don't need it, but sure. We fear that we'll get dinged on assessment. That's always the threat of the ding, and maybe other institutional shortcomings. And I think that this fear can breed malaise. So thinking about the upcoming site visit, I think it's important for us to keep the big picture in mind. On the one hand, in the accreditor institution relationship, it's dangerous to get smug and think that we're doing everything right. But I think it's equally important that we don't believe all the negative press about ourselves. My experience with accreditation site visits is that accreditors are curious, rigorous, detail-oriented, and incisive and thoughtful. They are not, they don't throw baloney, and they can recognize it when they see it or hear it, which I heard Chris say something similar. But in some way, I think they are our colleagues in the academic enterprise. And even though many of them are managers and administrators, many of them have been faculty in the past. So I think that faculty should see them as colleagues. They want us to succeed and they want us to do well. And I say this with the caveat that things continue to evolve, and the NWCCU of 3 or 7 or 15 years ago that I've known may have changed from the one that we'll meet in the fall. Faculty wanting to prepare for the site visit should read the report. And so I'm just echoing what Chris just said. And I think especially the sections that pertain to the work that we do, any of the standards for teaching and learning, and any of the governance or other areas that you're involved with as part of your professional work at the college. I've noticed that accreditors use the word appropriate throughout the standards, and I think this criterion allows them to evaluate the institution's particular mission and particular circumstances. So NWCCU does tell us what to do, but they don't tell us how to do it. So really, I was thinking in terms of a faculty audience, and this just, again, echoes what Chris said. If I were needing to just focus on what I want to know when the site visitors come in case I get interviewed, and I did, myself and another colleague got just selected to be interviewed by a couple evaluators a few years ago when we were getting looked at for our assessment. And so I think it's important to read the report so you know what the report is saying. What is Lane saying about what it does about student learning? And these are just some snippets from those standards. They're going to be looking for evidence of effective systems of assessment for programs and at the institutional level. And they're really going to be looking at closing the gap. Do we have evidence that we close the gap? So what I began with the symposia, those 25 symposia they're unfortunately not directly mapped back to the issues that they're addressing. And so those are the kinds of things that the accreditors are going to be looking for. And then standard 1D is about student achievement, as Chris already mentioned. And I think they'll be looking especially at sort of the larger institutional indicators to close equity gaps. And we'll be, you know, I think at the faculty level, we have less of an impact there. The institution really aggregates that information, but many of us will have something to say there. So that's all I have to say. I just hope we can be positive and sort of boosters, even though, you know, they don't want us to hide. I do think that morale is kind of low because of Zoom and a million other things. And I think that we want to lead with our strengths. I hope that we can, if we end up interviewing with these folks, and they'll find our problems, our weaknesses, so we don't have to accentuate those.